Oh my goodness. This is about to be the fakest episode I have ever done. Okay, not the episode itself, but the contents are about to be super fake because I have a fake babe story that I need to address. I am supposed to celebrate a person that was good at generating fake stories to a certain degree, and I have to deal with a bunch of fake advice, or at least I have to critique a bunch of fake advice. So the long and short of it is that I'm dealing with a lot of fake shit, okay? But anyways, I will try to keep things as real as possible because, I like to keep it real like that. And I am going to start things off not by addressing something fake because I feel like we'll have too much of that. I'm going to start by addressing something stupid. And for this stupid situation, it requires me to give a story that comes from none other than Kisii County. Now, apparently, there's a lady who is known by the name Mora, whose very young boyfriend, that we refer to as Ben 10, went ahead and stabbed a dude that she was shagging in a lodging not too long ago who just so happened to be a church deacon when he caught them in the lodging during Easter. Now, for those of y'all that have listened to me or have listened to this podcast for a particularly long time, y'all know that I usually describe this shit as absolute stupidity or the epitome of stupidity. And I will explain why that's the case very shortly because honestly, what in the fuck?
Get ready for the battle of the sexes.
As in, what would drive a young man to go and stab a dude, a much older dude, as per the story, which I'm going to read for you guys, all because of a much older woman that you're not even married to? Like, it doesn't make sense to me at all. But anyways, let me read the story for you guys just so that you guys can sort of understand and I can try and fill in most of the context of the entire situation. So the story reads, and I quote, 50-year-old Pauline Mora and her young lover Cyprian Karuri were arraigned at the Kisii law courts over the murder of a church deacon on Easter weekend. The elderly woman is at the center of a sensational killing of the deacon on Easter Sunday night. Mora's release by the court means she heads to the witness box to give testimony incriminating Karuri in the murder of Thompson Ndege, 53 years old, in a crime of passion. Ndege was stabbed in the chest by Karuri shortly after he emerged from a lodging with Mora. Karuri was reportedly trailing them. The deacon was also a deputy head teacher at Mecheo Secondary School in Borabu, Nyamira County. End quote. Now, here's the thing, and now I get to explain why I believe this is the epitome of stupidity. When you look at this guy's case, you actually kind of think about it. There's no way in which he comes out winning on this entire thing. Like, let's just think about this in a very practical way. This guy went ahead to go and stab a dude that his older girlfriend, much older girlfriend, because she's like 50 years old. I don't know how young dude is, but much older girlfriend has been sleeping with and will now be arraigned in court, meaning that there's a pretty good chance he'll go to jail because the chances of him pleading some sort of self-defense or some shit is very moot. And it's not like he was married to this woman, so it's not like he can really say that he was trying to protect his woman, so even the streets don't respect him. And so the guy's probably going to end up going to jail. And this woman will now, even though the guy didn't want her to sleep with anyone else, have the possibility to shag any other dude that she wants to shag, whether this guy likes it or not. Like, dude has pretty much gone ahead and retaliated, and now this babe can get shagged by even 5 dudes at the same time, and dude won't be able to do fuck all. And you really think that you actually retaliating against someone that your partner has cheated on you with, or even your partner, is actually a good decision? Come on, bruh. It's like some of these stories are trying to rile me up before I actually start the podcast in a proper manner. With a lot more positivity and with a nice, better sounding voice, where I start by saying, welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who wants to petition that crimes of passion be rebranded to crimes of stupidity. Because you cannot justify the stupidity that comes with committing a crime in the name of love so that you can go to prison and get raped without it. He's a man who still believes that astrology should have been the study of us. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denverby. The show is Battle of the Sexes, our weekly love, sex, and relationships show where I get to talk about people being stupid. Like, I'm actually still kind of a little bit pissed off about it because it's just a case of a dude being stupid for nothing. And now he's gonna end up being bent over by other dudes because he simply didn't like the idea of his older girlfriend being bent over. Like, that shit don't make sense. But anyways, you may agree, you may disagree, but I usually talk about more than just that. And you can reach out to me if you want to give feedback, if you want to show some love, or if you want to suggest a topic that we can discuss. On IG, on Facebook, it is at Breaktime on Westside. On Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. The DMs are always open, and I will be more than happy to take whatever it is that you give me. And if it is actually worth discussing, then I may just make an entire episode about the entire thing, you know? But anyways, all that said and done, I do have a main topic to get into, which is full of a bunch of fake shit. But before I do that, I need to address some fake shit before that. Two things actually. First of all, I want us to at least, I don't know if people take a moment of silence on something that they can pause on, but either way, I wanted us to celebrate the life of Jerry Springer, a man who was responsible for the Jerry Springer Show. He passed away at the ripe old age of 79 about a couple of days ago, if I'm not wrong. And to be quite honest, this guy is pretty much one of the few people that made relationships interesting on TV. Like, there's people that are used to soaps, people that are used to like going on talk shows and discussing shit in a very serious, sober way. Jerry Springer made relationship talk and relationship drama interesting as fuck. And yes, his stories, or at least some of the scenarios that would come up would be fake. They mostly probably were scripted, but the amount of crazy shit that was there was just entertaining for a fuck ton of people. And if you're among the people that would sit and like watch the shows religiously, or even just would watch them on occasion, then you clearly know how entertaining the shows were. And if you're one of those people that saw clips, then you know how interesting his shows were. And the guy was just always very consistent, even with the wild shit that he did, because whenever some wild shit went down, you'd always just know guys would be in the audience section just screaming, Jerry, 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 Jerry. Like, that shit was actually pretty interesting. And honestly, you have to give props to the guy. The guy had a pretty long time running show, and he did a pretty good job on it, and I do believe that he does deserve to be celebrated. But that aside, someone else died, and in as much as I know this is now almost starting to sound like an obituary, it's not exactly what you think. Now, this particular story I found interesting because of who exactly died, because it was Kim Kardashian, or at least Kim Kardashian's lookalike, so discount Kim Kardashian. Now, the Kim Kardashian lookalike and model known as Christina Ashton has died after a plastic surgery procedure gone wrong. The American model and Kim Kardashian lookalike has passed away of a heart attack while recovering from a plastic surgery treatment. The model, also known online as Ashton G, passed away last Thursday in a hospital where she was healing from surgery. So, in other words, and I'm thinking this might actually be the thing, she died while her ass was hurting. Which is a bit funny, and it's not nice to make fun of the dead, but I just have a couple of questions that I need to ask here, because I honestly feel like we need answers for some of this shit. So, like, first of all, when she goes to heaven on Judgment Day, or when she's in front of like the angel that's supposed to let them through to heaven, will she be described as Kim K or Ashton G, depending on the fact that she went earlier than the other? Then secondly, considering that a good chunk of her body was plastic, because I'm looking at some of her photos and she had a lot of augmentations and plastic surgery done. Like, can you really say that the shorty is particularly dead, or can she be recycled? Like, I'm just asking. And when you kind of think about it, is the death an entirely bad thing? And I know it's not nice to say this, but considering that we are fighting for a more sustainable world, do you really think it's a good idea to cry over spilled plastic? Huh? Is it really environmentally friendly? Okay, maybe that was a little too harsh. That was just straight up brutal. I probably shouldn't have gone that low. Even I'm feeling bad about that. Ugh. But anyways, I can understand, yes, there is an issue of body dysmorphia, and sometimes people can take it a little too far. But considering that this is a babe who had already had plastic surgery done on her, the fact that she went to have some more done, like, is it like an addiction or something? Cause like, yo, that's just a little too much for one body. Like, you only have one body. It's not like you can get another one, but it doesn't mean that you have to beat the one that you have all the way to its absolute end. But anyways, since I don't entirely understand what that world is like, I'm just gonna leave it for now and I'm gonna move things on because we do have a main topic to discuss and I probably should have started with that. So moving things on to our main topic of today. Now, for a bit of a while last year, and actually I think quite a number of times, I've actually discussed the whole idea of taking bullshit advice from the internet all in the name of relationship advice without actually just sort of trying to fact check it or look at the logic behind a bunch of what is usually said. And I've had this discussion before, and unfortunately, even though I try to speak against quite a lot of the shit that's said, some people just end up falling for the same shit again and again and again. And every so often, you find that some new page will come up trying to promise some supposed benefits or results that'll come, especially after they've given you a bunch of bullshit dating or relationship advice. Now, the one that I found is known as Deep Loveology, which I guess came fairly recently, and it was talking about relationships that have lasted particularly long. And I was particularly intrigued because even though I haven't been in the most long term of relationships, I do know a thing or two about them. So I'm gonna read for you exactly what it says here, and then we can get into whatever it is being said and see whether it's true or false and why I think it's absolute bull. So it says, and I quote, "I've seen men leave 5 to 10 year relationships, turn around and get married to a woman he's known for 6 months, and he does all the things his ex always begged him to do. Word of advice, stop preaching to these men. They hear you. He's not going to ever be the man you want him to be because you're not the woman he wants to be with. People change for who they want. Period. If you're frustrated with your man going cold, losing interest or pulling away, just try this mind-blowing technique and watch as he begins calling you, chasing you and making you feel like you're the only woman he'll ever have eyes for. This video has helped thousands of women, including me, link in my bio." End quote. Okay, first of all, let's look at this page because I first saw the post before I even looked at the page. And the page, which is Deep Loveology, claims, and this is in its bio, to have deep, meaningful relationship quotes, sharing mature thoughts, and its aim is to unlock the mysterious world of men. Which I find to be particularly interesting because I'm a man and I've been discussing a lot of guy shit, and whatever the fuck has been said on this particular post is nothing but absolute bullshit. Because honestly, claiming to understand the mysterious world of men or help people understand the mysterious world of men and then start by saying that a man who's left a 5 to 10 year relationship with you, getting and possibly even engaging and marrying a babe of 6 months is simply because he didn't want to be with you and you're not the woman he wants to be with is nothing but a work of bullshit. Like, there's people who produce works of art. This is a work of bullshit. And the thing is, there's so much when it comes to someone leaving a relationship like this in favor of someone else that they end up being with in about 6 months, that simply saying that he was tired of you is such a bland and very generalized and very off the mark thing to say, even though you claim to understand men even a little bit. Because one of the first things that people actually need to understand is that guys leave both short and long-term relationships for very many different reasons. There's no one size fits all for any of those things. Even though you were to say for short-term relationships or long-term relationships, there's like one reason for each, that's an overgeneralization. And to think that means that you don't entirely understand guys, or at least guys when it comes to dating and relationships. Because if you're in a relationship for 5 to 10 years, by the time you're in a relationship with a guy for 5+ years, dude must have probably already decided that he's probably gonna settle down with you. or he's been in the relationship, or he's been in that relationship long enough that he's gotten comfortable such that settling down can be something that he can very easily do. So for him to get out of such a relationship, and then you're saying it's because he just doesn't want you, for the most part, this reason just doesn't make a ton of sense. And I'll even try and back this one up, because there's something that dude said, because I honestly don't know if this was a guy or a woman who said this, but they said, and I quote, "People change for who they want," which is actually a very bullshit statement. Because, and I'm fortunate enough that I actually heard this before I recorded this episode from the psychologist known as Adam Lane Smith, who said, and I quote, "Women change for relationships, men change for circumstances." So thinking that this man is going to change and be a different person because of you, the person, is a very, very bad thing to think of. And to think that this person is claiming that they have the tools, the tricks, and the strategies to make the man that you're with, who supposedly doesn't want to change for you, all of a sudden change and start acting a certain way, is probably very, very misleading. Because even though you could actually make a guy do that, it doesn't mean that he would do that for very long. Because you'd make him want to do all of those things just to be with you, then after he's been with you, the moment he gets tired, he reverts back to factory settings, and you're the one that's fucked in the long run. No pun intended. But instead of nitpicking, let me actually address the much larger elephant in the room here. Because this whole thing of a dude leaving his babe that he's been with for like 5 to 10 years or some shit, and then going to be with a babe, and in 6 months they're getting married. Like, first of all, I think that's very drastic, and if a guy is doing that, there has to be a reason behind it, a particularly big one, or at least a big one to the guy. And it's usually not just because of the individual, it's normally the actions of the individual instead of the individual themselves. Because if you're with a babe that you think is ugly and you've been dating them for 5 years, their ugliness doesn't really bother you after 5 years. It's not like you wake up one day after 5 years and you're like, "My baby's ugly, I need to change her." No, dude was definitely aware that she was ugly when he started dating her, and whether it bothered him or not, if he's been with her for 5+ years, it probably doesn't really bother him all that much. Not unless if the babe is not only ugly, but she's let herself go and she looks even worse now. Of which, that one still doesn't bother us as much, not unless if the change itself is drastic. Because even statistically, men still love their women even though there's a little bit of weight that's been added. But all in all, it's mostly down to the actions or inactions of the partner that will make a guy want to leave the relationship. For example, I know there's a statistic that says that if you don't have a child within 5 to 8 years of being in a relationship with a person, then there's a pretty good chance that you guys are going to break up soon after that. And it is something that you do see happen quite a bit. People get into relationships for a pretty long time, and I guess sometimes people get into a relationship thinking that they can make the other person, feel more convinced to have kids, and the person sticks to their no up until they get to a point where they're like, "I don't think I can make this person change," and they choose to bounce. Then there's other things like, a certain behavior that you might not have been comfortable with, or at least that the man wasn't particularly comfortable with, that the babe has been doing, and he probably might have found it tolerable for quite a bit of a while. Probably they weren't living together, or maybe it was a long distance thing. And eventually, once they start staying together or they start spending more time together, he finds that he can't take any more of that shit. Or probably he had given us some time to change, but over time, dude realized that she wasn't going to change, and he decided to bounce. And he found someone that doesn't have that particular behavior, that ticks the most boxes, and he decided to be with her. Like, that one can probably make a little bit more sense. And sometimes these dudes will probably get pussy whipped, and they've made a stack of cash because they were together from the ground up. They've worked, they've been with the same babe, but the babe wasn't particularly the finest, but it was the best he could get at the time. So now the guy is at the top, he's making a ton of money, he's getting a ton of attention, and a bunch of young hoes want to be with the guy, so the guy chooses to go there. and he chooses to clap cheeks once he gets pussy whipped, and he decides to end the relationship and goes to supposedly marry this babe. We've heard of stories that have happened like that, and that does happen from time to time. It's not a very common thing to do, but for some people who've come from the ground up, for some guys who've come from the ground up, it is something that you can see happening sometimes. Although that reason in itself doesn't mean that you shouldn't support a guy coming up, or that the guy who's sort of come up from the ground will not treat you well or stay faithful to you, because there's also quite a number of guys that actually do stick with the babes that they were with from when they were at the bottom all the way till they're at the top right now. Another reason is the recognition that they've been in a crappy relationship for a long time, and they've just existed in that relationship because it's crappy and it's the only thing that they've really been in for a long time. And the thought of getting out and trying to look for another babe and shit is probably like too much work for the guy, or the guy just got comfortable in a shitty situation and he didn't think of moving up until he probably met someone else, and it suddenly made him rethink the entire thing. Because that happens for a lot of guys just the same way it happens with a lot of babes. Because it's almost like having a shit job that pays you fairly okay money, because you're not complaining about the money, you just don't like the kind of job that you're in. But if you see a much better job, or at least if you see a job with much better terms, pretty much the same pay, even sometimes even slightly less or even slightly more, you might actually think about changing, because it's not about the money per se, it's about the fact that you're getting a much better experience if you're with someone else. And that's something that a lot of guys, and hell, even a lot of babes, will get out of a long-term relationship that was shitty for them for. Although 6 months is a little bit fast for someone who just got out of a relationship to be trying to get married to someone, that kind of seems like jumping the gun. And to be very honest, I think the only instance where I've heard of something similar to this is when a guy is trying to settle down and get married, and the babe is against the idea, and she's been dragging on for a very long time. There's times when guys will actually want to settle down and get married, and some guys will even have like timelines or a deadline for such a thing. And if a babe can't say yes by that deadline time, or can't adjust herself or start behaving in a certain way that he would find favorable by the time that deadline reaches, dude will most certainly leave. Because there's some guys that are very, very loving and will love being with a certain particular babe, but they know very well that there's some things that they just won't be able to take into a marriage with them. And the babe might not be willing to change some of those things, which actually sort of goes back to the exact thing that I had started with when I was explaining this. A lot of times it is a case of action or inaction on the babe's part that can actually get a guy to move from a long-term relationship like this. So if your guy, or if a guy has told you that he wants you to do something, or he wants you to change a certain aspect about yourself because he wants to settle down with you, if you don't listen and the guy chooses to leave, who do you have to blame besides yourself? Because at the end of the day, if you're with the guy and you want to settle down with the guy and he's telling you to do something and you're not doing it, what's to stop him from going to look for whatever it is that you're doing or not doing in someone else, Which kind of draws me to the conclusion of this entire thing. A lot of times, babes tend to think that the issue is them as a person, so like their looks or something, and yet the reality is mostly action-based rather than aesthetics or physicality. Because a lot of guys who will decide to settle down or not settle down with a babe, if they've been with them for years, like multiple years, 5+ years, they don't care as much about the physical side as they do about things like personality, behavior, and how sustainable your actions can be in the long term. Because interestingly enough, I have never had a guy saying that he does not want to marry a babe that he's been with for years because she has shit pussy. I have never, in my years of podcasting, in my years of talking to people in relationships, heard a man saying that he does not want to marry a babe because she has shit pussy, or because she doesn't know how to fuck well. because if that ever becomes too big of an issue, you can silently just go and shag a babe outside of the entire relationship as an extracurricular activity. Not that I am endorsing it, but guys know that they have that option and can sometimes take it, but a lot of times they are very okay settling for shit sex because at least it's sex. Just saying. But I might be wrong about all of this shit, and maybe there are other reasons, or maybe I'm wrong. Probably it's the looks that can affect it, or the shit sex. But I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, on Facebook. It is at Breaktime, on Westside, on Twitter. It is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.